77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts, including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.
The Rev and The Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Good morning. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, I just want to take a moment and talk about the tragedy in Texas, where so many people were killed, many of whom were young people. And people are asking, where was God? You know, that's a recurring question whenever there's a tragedy, and for which we don't have any acceptable answer. I remember Harold Kushner tried to confront that, and when bad things happen to good people, and Harold had a son who suffered with progeria, an aging illness, who died. I think he was 11, 12 years old when he died, and said he was always asked as a rabbi, how could God do this? And Harold's response was, God created an imperfect world where there are disasters, tragedies, human deaths, and we have to do what we can to make it better.
Wait. I gotta challenge something you just said. God created an imperfect world.
Yeah, it wasn't perfect.
But at the end of creation, the 7 days, or however you want to count them, he saw that everything was good.
Not perfect.
He pronounced it good.
Good. Good is not perfect, right?
Explain that
Didn't
to me.
say it was complete and perfect. It's a good world, but you are partners in this creation. And
Right.
you have a responsibility to
Human
make
beings
it
decisions. Yeah.
right. You have a responsibility to make it better. We often talk about repairing the world, or as you say in Hebrew, tikkun olam. We have to do something to improve what was. So God said, here's the blueprint. It's good. Now you work on it, make it even better.
But this is a natural disaster.
Yeah.
However, already people are searching to find out, where did we as human beings fail?
Right.
Where were the sirens, the alarms, the alerts? Why wasn't there more protection? So there's going to be investigations. I mean, there are 120 deaths so far. Could be more than that now. I don't know. And the search continues for bodies. It's horrific, and a lot of them were young girls. I was reading one article of a young lady who actually grew up in that part of Texas and went to that camp, and it was a big deal to be associated with the camp and one of the camp girls, and it was generational. So you have moms and grandmothers, who were tied to that camp.
And I think some people raise the question of where was God, because it was a Christian camp, right? That was there.
Yeah.
And they
It
said,
was a
well, if you go to a
Christian
Christian camp, how could God allow this to happen?
This is some of the hypocrisy, Rabbi, and I'm going to be very raw here, right? Because when catastrophe happens, depending upon who it happens to, it is called by some folks a blessing or a cursing, right? So, in one breath, if it happens to a particular kind of people, it's the judgment of God, right?
Yeah.
And if it happens to believers, let's say, in some faith, now it's looked upon as, the devil or a horrible catastrophe. How do we make those distinctions?
One of the things that always troubled me is when someone survives a tragedy, you'll hear the response, God was with me. God saved me. God spared me. And I often think to
Which
myself,
means he wasn't with the other
he wasn't
people.
with the others, right. The others,
Yeah.
the others he wasn't interested in, it was only you. And I that's always, it's angered me. I don't think we believe in a God that says, well, you 3-year-old you're going to live. You, the other 3-year-old, you're going to die.
Is that what your tradition, your faith tradition believes?
It says that we don't have an answer here on earth because the heavens are higher than the earth. And we wrestle with it. We struggle with it. We don't know. And I think we have to be honest about that. I don't like people who make up stories. You know, I remember sitting through a funeral of a young person, and the officiant said, you know, God wants good people around him. That's why he took so-and-so. And I think to myself, really? God wants an 8-year-old child? You know, it's just... so I think we have to be more selective, more thoughtful when we give responses, and also be very candid that there are limitations to our understanding. We don't know.
Right.
But we do know that when it happens, we have a responsibility to ask what happened and why did it happen and what could we have done to prevent it from happening.
Yeah, and what can we learn from what happened within Catholic doctrine? You know, it points to a greater good. So in other words, some greater good is going to come out of it. And it's also believed that way in and amongst many Protestants.
Yeah.
I shared the story of losing my son at a prayer conference in DC last year. And a guy came up to me after, because I talked about how, you know, in spite of my son's passing, my wife and I got to raise our grandsons, who are his sons. And,
Right.
you know, they're doing very well in life and they're on tracks that they never thought that they would be on. And the middle grandson said, you know, Pop, I realized that had my father not passed, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't be where I am. And then he said to me, he says, not because he had to die in order for this to happen, but something good has come out of it.
Right.
And I think when we look at it that way, you know, it makes it a lot easier because we don't know. We don't know why this person and not the other.
Yeah. I remember many conversations with Devorah Halberstam, who's the founder of the Brooklyn Jewish Children's Museum. And her son was murdered on the Brooklyn Bridge in a terrorist attack. He and others were attacked. And here's a woman devastated by the loss of a child who went on to build a children's museum so that people could come and learn about difference. Because if you look at Crown Heights, where the museum is located, it's a very diverse area. And you have kids from the public schools coming from all different backgrounds into the museum and learning the backgrounds of and beliefs of people who are different from one another. And as it said, she found the ability to extract triumph from tragedy. Right? She took
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. She took that tragic moment, which some people would have walked away from and say, I can't continue. There's nothing more for me to do. I've lost my child. And that's an understandable reaction. And she said, no, I have to do something about this to see that fewer tragedies like this, fewer hateful attacks occur.
Yeah, bring some good out of it. Bring some positive change and impact to human society out of tragedy. I believe in that 100%. And the grieving process takes time. There's no one size fits all grieving. You know, we as clergy are familiar with the 5 stages of grief that people go through. But how long it takes, we can't say. You should be over it in a month, a year. I think what we have to be careful of is when it puts us in a state of mind and emotion that we shut down and we become non-productive and fall into a place where we are suffering from a mental health problem as a result of it. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's the inappropriate use of the word closure. When people say, you know, you have to find closure.
Right?
Like you have this devastating loss, and somehow you're supposed to say, all right, let's close that chapter. We're closed, and now let's move on and write a new chapter. Well, you don't really close it.
Well, I guess some point where they can feel comfortable. So I was at another leadership conference in Orlando last year, and I shared the same story. And 80-year-old guy, he comes up to me after the meeting was over and tears in his eyes. And he says, "Can I hug you?" I said, "Yeah, what's up?" And he says to me, he said, "I lost my daughter when she was 30 years old. And I just wrestled through it all my life. But today I heard from someone that I could look in the eyes who understands my pain."
Wow.
He said to me, "I feel that I found closure." It was a deep and profound moment for me personally to know that, my story impacted him. But you never know what people need to hear.
And you can't tell someone, you can't prescribe closure for another person. You can help a person get through some of the challenges, but you can't say, now you got to close the chapter. That person knows when he or she can or will close the chapter. We're going to take a break, Rev. It's been a great conversation. When we come back, we're going to talk about a very, very controversial ruling by the IRS impacting clergy, houses of worship. So stay tuned.
Very interesting. Yeah. So stay tuned for more of The Rev and The Rabbi.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.
Using a Clorox disinfecting wipe to clean that stuck-on sauce from the stove feels like...
Oh, boy. It tickles. Stop.
It feels like coming home to your needy corgi after a long day.
Best part of the day, finally.
With Clorox, clean feels carefree. Clean feels good. Use as directed.
Marketers, you know that feeling when your content just works? When you crush a viral trend before 10 a.m.? When one tiny tweak to a landing page sends click-through rates through the roof? That's Contentful. Dynamic content made blissfully simple. Contentful helps you create and launch personalized experiences instantly across any digital channel. No stress, no limits, only possibilities. Come get the feels at Contentful.com.
Ah, Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant.
Whoa, that's refreshing.
And a 9.5 plus pH for every way you move.
I did take a Spain class today.
Restoring like a pro. Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant. For those with a taste for taste. Grab yours today.
The Rev and the Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Rev, you and I are always nervous if we see some communication from the IRS. The one thing you don't want is to get a letter from the IRS that we need to talk to you. And when they say we know you're busy, we'll come see you, then you're really in trouble. It's not just a written communication.
But I thought we were protected. We're a not-for-profit religious organization protected under the Religious Corporations Law. But things have changed.
Yeah, new communication. There's a ruling that we
New York Times article.
We are not in violation of the Johnson Amendment, which prohibited houses of worship, pulpit pronouncements endorsing a candidate. That was forbidden. You forfeit your 501c3 if you did that.
Right. And that's, again, that goes back to 1954. In fact, the history behind it is quite interesting because Lyndon Johnson, who became president after the Kennedy assassination, he was a senator at that time, a Democratic senator in the state of Texas. Right. And in his reelection campaign to the U.S. Senate, he faced strong opposition from two nonprofit organizations. And he was so disturbed because they were distributing materials that criticized him and supported, his political opponents. And they solicited churches, got involved, and so he was really upset. Let me use nice language for radio. So he introduced an amendment to the Internal Revenue Code during a debate on the Revenue Act of 1954, and it passed without
Right.
floor debate,
Yeah.
committee hearings, or public discussion. It just went right through, and it simply said that you and I, as clergy, cannot, from our pulpit, endorse a political candidate without suffering the loss of our tax exempt status.
Right.
So here it is decades later, and the Trump administration is now saying IRS is not going to enforce that. I mean, we've violated it, of course.
Yeah.
You have African Americans in the civil rights movement violating. You have the Christian right violating it. But at least there were guardrails. What does it mean now that that's been lifted? What are the pros and cons about it, Rabbi?
I think there are a few cons. Number one,
You went right to the cons. Okay.
that's what I'm used to. Look, I'm used to hearing criticism, right? When you get an email, let me say this to you. I like you, but after the but comes the comment. I don't think people come to houses of worship because they want to learn the political wizardry of the clergy. I don't think we went to school to be proficient in politics. I think what we did go to school for is to look at our traditions and examine how do those traditions impact the issues of the day, the issues of our lives. So, and I can think of no more divisive issue than an endorsement to rip apart a community.
Yeah.
Just imagine, there you are, you stand up, you endorse someone, and a significant percentage or segment of your community doesn't agree with you. Suddenly, this is not the church, this is not the synagogue for me, I'm out of here. What do we need this for? What does this do for us?
Yeah, clergy become partisan and they can risk losing. For me, what's most important is my moral credibility. And we can become tools of political machines. It's problematic. We are supposed to have a prophetic voice to speak truth to power, but we can end up becoming the arm of power. I mean, the history of the Christian church in Rome, when Constantine in the 300s decided that he would legalize Christianity and make it the state religion, it then became the state church. And that's a problem because the founding fathers of America, of this nation, did not want to repeat 70 years of bloodshed in Europe with religious fighting.
Yeah.
So they were careful to say, yeah, we're a nation under God, but we're not going to elevate one particular religion that everyone has to conform to. So it's dangerous.
Well-
We're still on the con side.
Well, if I can make an endorsement on the pulpit, why can't I take contributions from the politician?
Well, now you're
Right?
talking. Rabbi, the influence of money,
Right.
because now I could come to you and, as candidate, ABC for XYZ political party, and I say, Rabbi, you know what? I'm going to make a generous donation to your synagogue in the amount of about $500,000. But what I need you to do for me is publicly,
not that there's a
in
quid
the
pro quo,
service, from the
not that it's
pulpit,
transactional. Yeah.
I need you to endorse my candidacy for, whatever position. Rabbi, this allows for this to happen. And politicians can end up exploiting religious leaders to secure voting blocks, because not only are you speaking to your congregation, but you're speaking to your network, because there's often networks of churches and synagogues and mosques.
Yeah. And I ask you, we went to school many years, we studied theology. We're proud of our particular tradition. Did we, when we enrolled and studied, did we expect to stand on a pulpit and endorse people? Is that what we really wanted? On the contrary, we want to be able to teach. That's what rabbi means. Reverend, we're teachers. And we want to teach our tradition. And we don't want to teach people, whom they should vote for because we approved of that person.
It's interesting because evangelist Billy Graham, very well known here in America, around the world, and very well respected. In 1981, he had an interview with Parade magazine, and they asked him about his political involvement because he advised presidents. He was very outspoken, but he took a shift. And in 1981, one of the things that he said in that interview was the clergy should stand in the center so that they can preach to all. And he said he's concerned about a wedding between the church and the political realm. And in those days, he specifically spoke about the Christian right. But, based upon his decades of experience and a respected voice, he was concerned.
So let me ask you this. Billy Graham and a host of others who talk about standing in the center, didn't we know who they were supporting? Whom they were supporting. My English teacher would correct me. Whom they were supporting. That's the funny part of it, that sometimes there are those who explain an issue in such a way that you know exactly who they think you should vote for. All right, we can talk about, it's all right, but there was a judge years ago in Brooklyn. I don't remember his name at the moment, but he would turn to the jury and he would say, do you think this person is innocent or is he guilty? And with the inflection of his voice, you knew what he wanted you to think, right?
Exactly right.
and I think we
do that from the podium,
right.
the pulpit. After we invite the candidate in, we say, this is the kind of leadership we need. I'm not telling you who to vote for.
But if that's in Jewish tradition, for example, you're not allowed to give a eulogy on a major Jewish holiday. There are no funerals, but let's say on Hanukkah, you're not allowed to give a eulogy on Hanukkah. It's a happy occasion. So what do you do if you have a funeral on Hanukkah? You say, look, today's Hanukkah, and I'm not allowed to give the eulogy. However, if it weren't Hanukkah, this is what I would say, right? So it's the thing. I'm not allowed to endorse, but I'm thinking this right now, which of course happens to align with the position of a particular candidate. Anyway.
So what about the pro side? But wait, what about the pro side? First Amendment, clergy are American citizens and should not be penalized for expressing political views. But moral and social engagement around issues like abortion, immigration, poverty, and justice. It levels a playing field. Mobilizing voters.
But do it on the issue. Do it, not the individual. Do it on the issue. But I'll tell you who can talk about this as well. Our guest. Yeah. Hank SHeinkopf, right. Who's going to be coming on the air with us. And Hank is many things. He's a political strategist. He's a political analyst. He's a communications specialist. And most important, he's a rabbi. So he is a very accomplished person. I've been privileged to know Hank for many years. And he's a no-nonsense kind of person. You ask a question, you're going to get the direct answer. Whether you like the answer or not, you're getting the answer.
I've interviewed him.
Yeah, so you know. So all right, we'll take a break and come back with Hank SHeinkopf.
Yeah, so stay tuned for more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Network.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
They say to only bring what you can carry. So with the all-new 2025 Ford Expedition Tremor, bring a lot. Like 3 dirt bikes, a few tents, an entire crew ready to make memories. A panoramic 24-inch display, and the confidence to push your limits. The all-new 2025 Ford Expedition Tremor.
Always consult the owner's manual before off-road driving. Know your terrain and trail difficulty and use appropriate safety gear. Max payload varies based on accessories and vehicle configuration. See label on door jam for carrying capacity of a specific vehicle. Always properly secure cargo.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Got a car to sell but no time to waste? Hop on to Carvana.com to get a real offer for your car in seconds. All you have to do is enter your license plate, answer a few quick questions, and if you accept the offer, Carvana will pay you as soon as you hand the keys over. They even offer same-day pickup in many cities. Save your time, score some cash, and sell your car the convenient way to Carvana. Pickup times vary. Fees may apply.
Choice Hotels get you more for your money so you can maximize any road trip. Let's get real close to hear the maximum sizzle of Comfort Inn's free hot breakfast. Maximized. Check into more. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners, meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
The Rev and The Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Rev, as I mentioned to you earlier, we have a guest on who is communication specialist, political strategist, political analyst, a rabbi, the CEO of Hank SHeinkopf Communications, and we have none other than, of course, Hank SHeinkopf. Always a pleasure having you, and I really cherish our friendship, Hank, because I know when I have a political question, I can turn to you. And you remind me years ago, before my time, Harry Truman, get up to speak, and people would yell, "Give him hell, Harry." And what did he say? "I never give him hell. I tell the truth, but they think it's hell." And that's you, Hank. You're always telling the truth. All right, Hank, question number one. How is it possible that someone who espouses the views of Zoran Mamdani vis-a-vis Israel,
okay,
right? How is it possible someone who has those views could be victorious in the Democratic primary in a city that has some 1 million Jews? And not to mention all the economic policies, but that one alone. Hank?
Well, first, thank you, Rabbi, and thank you, Reverend, for having me on today. It's a very important question because it doesn't speak just about New York; it speaks about the nation. So how could win? They ran a brilliant campaign. Andrew Cuomo ran a lousy campaign. Brad Lander ran a stupid campaign. The ads were idiotic. And what happened is that Mamdani, which I predicted, 7 months ago, I said Mamdani was the guy to watch. I said it, and people came back and said, "You didn't know what you're talking about." I said, "Watch." But they ran a brilliant campaign. The campaign I would have run for him, which is in politics, we target people, right? So we look at a voter file, which is a listing of voters and their voter history. And we look at people generally who are what we call 3 out of 4s. They voted in 3 of the last 4 elections, or 4 out of 4s who voted in 4 of the last 4 elections. But what the Mamdani gang did is they found people who voted in 0 out of the last 4, 1 out of the last 4, 2 out of the last 4. And the end result is they had a universe that worked very well. He also ran a campaign that was in the 21st century, which I thought was terrific. They used the ads were very good. They were in the form of almost texts, TEXTS. The mail looked like overstated graphics, which are very common in the hip hop era and previously. And I think that they were very. And the message was very clear: 1, 2, 3, 10 seconds, and out. There's nothing complicated about it. And the youth of today really are brainless. They've never paid a price, never borne a burden, never had a tough day. This generation that voted for him has eaten more regularly than any generation in the history of mankind. They've been housed, although it may be more expensive, more frequently and more seriously than any other generation in the history of mankind. They make more money. They are professionals. They're educated. And the Jews particularly have substituted God's name for the names Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and Cornell in the belief that somehow if they do that, they will be accepted. When in fact, it is a delusional argument. And I think Tom Segev, the Israeli author, wrote the book about Jews in Germany, how they deluded themselves until the very end. And that's what's going to happen here. Some relative portion. So one last thing. I just had a discussion with someone in the gym who's much smarter than I am. We said, "Well, what do you think about Jews from Mamdani?" I said, "Well, I don't want to tell you what I would do to them before they do it to my family or to me. But this idea that somehow," I said to him, "you don't understand what globalized the Intifada means. Intifada means blowing up buses with suicide bombers, with innocent people on them so that body parts go splashing onto a street. Intifada means killing innocent Jews in Buenos Aires because you decided that the Iranians have a good idea. It means murdering people throughout the world. So what are you talking about? So any Jew that finds himself in that position, rabbinically, it would be good to get a court of 3 rabbis together and have a chayrim, excommunication temporarily. But they don't go to synagogue, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Rev?
So you're associating that with Mamdani. Why? What is it something he said? Something in his past? You're associating this. Explain to our audience. Yeah.
Well, he said it. He said, well, twice the Intifada. He's been a vocal opponent of Israel. And biblically, it's hard to hate Israel and not hate Jews. It just doesn't go together. People can delude themselves, but from a biblical perspective, it doesn't work that way. He said globalize the Intifada. I didn't say it. He's been an opponent of Israel. He has been vociferous about it. He comes from a family. His father is a Jew hater, an Israel hater, who's said frankly that the Jews have no place in the Middle East, certainly not in a Jewish state or a community. His mother was a very well-regarded filmmaker, and bless her for her success. I am told tried to stop Gail Gadot, who a fine actress, from appearing on the stage of the Academy Awards, and I would guess they did it not because she was wearing a blue dress, but she's a Jewess. So when you have people like that, and I was not a chemistry major in college. I'm BA, MA, MPhil, PhD as a former high school dropout. So my view is a very simple one. I know the difference, although I did not attend chemistry classes, between water and other substances. And when someone is drinking water, it's one thing. But when they have acid in the glass, I know the difference. And people should really pay attention to what people say, because they generally tend to mean it.
What percentage of the people you think voted with Israel at top of the agenda of the Jewish community?
I think that what's happened is that this generation of younger people who are alienated from religion, who are also absolutely unengaged in communal activities. I mean, there's a reason why Masons are dying, Kiwanans are dying, Lions are dying, Elks are dying, service organizations, Rotarians that do simple things like run burn centers, run hospitals, contribute significant amounts of charity. This generation is not doing any of that. These young people that voted for Mandami, they expect to be taken care of. So I don't think they have any sense of relationship to what society requires and are entirely self-engaged. And Mandami represents that very same breed of thinking, which is, how do I make my rent cheaper? Yeah.
But how? I mean, a city as diverse as New York City, how can an extreme successfully gain the cooperation of all of the diverse community that we have here?
It's a good question, Rev. I mean, it's happening because the Democratic Party is not a party. Now, here you have a guy who's not a Democrat, he's a socialist, who's commandeered the Democratic Party for his own use, who has had the gall to stand up and say that one statement, his people are saying this, but he may not have said it, but his people are. The gall to say that they're going to take power, and then they're going to go out and get the Democrats in the Congress, and they're going to go get the non-progressives in Albany and take them out of office. It's a generational argument. What they mean is that Hakeem Jeffries is going to go, who is likely to be the first African-American speaker of the United States House of Representatives. It means that they will take out a guy like Carl Hastie, who's a black speaker, a black man who happens to be the Speaker of the State Assembly. Andrew Stewart Cousins, a black woman who happens to be the majority leader of the State Assembly, and on and on and on and on. This idea that somehow you can have a partial revolution is idiotic. And anybody who knows history knows that Leninists, for example, killed everybody, but Stalin made sure they were all dead. Why? Because the revolution goes on, and it takes time to work itself out. This is a revolution and a takeover of the Democratic Party that has been spurred along by Bernie Sanders and by AOC. And if what's her name of the Cook Political Report was on PBS a couple weeks ago, Amy Walter. And she said that the candidate of the young people who are now taking over the Democratic Party in revolt and trying to remove people who are older, upsetting a seniority system that's tend to work pretty significantly with stability in the Congress for a couple hundred years now. But anyway, that their candidate was not Kamala Harris. Their candidate was Bernie Sanders. What that represents is a continuation of that generation's brain, which is $9 lattes are fine and $100 meals are fine, and let's not give charity, but we'll blame everybody else for our condition.
What are the young people missing by the title democratic socialism? What are they missing? Is it simply a disguise for socialism because they attach the term Democrat to it, or democratic socialist? What are these young people missing?
I don't think.
What are they not seeing?
It's an important question you raise. I don't think they're thinking about it. I think they're just voting, and the moral argument that made American politics what it is was about ensuring that people who work for a living had opportunity, and that they had the possibility of realizing what the founding fathers tried in their best fashion to do, despite their protection of slavery and states' rights at the time, without which there would have been no United States. So you have these young people who are highly educated but not educated, who are making more money than anybody, who see that and have contributed nothing to society. I mean, they've borne no burden and paid no price. That's very important to note. Whereas the generations that preceded them paid a price, bore a burden, understood the nature of democracy as being something that you had to work at. They have taken this democratic socialist idea and put it together, and people don't understand what the DSA is. Democratic Socialist America. It's a marriage of DSOC, which is the Democratic Socialist Organizing Committee of Michael Harrington, who was not an anti-Semite, certainly by any measure, and SDS, the Students for Democratic Society, put together. And the end result is this bifurcated thing whose main plank is, so where you start off is hating the state of Israel and demanding that people engage in boycott, divestment, and sanctions, which Brad Lander, who was a self-loathing Jew, who was one of Mandami's major importance, who I think will want to be the supporters, and was likely to want to be the deputy mayor, and it was a crappy controller. You look at the number of audits that he didn't do, the pension management that he did, which was lousy in comparison to what other pension systems got over the time, who has been nothing more than a political hack, and frankly, has been a lifelong, as I can tell, or at least as long as I can tell, which is at least in public life, a supporter of boycott, divestment, and sanctions in the state of Israel. Did not renew purchases. He's the first controller since I don't know when who refused to purchase Israel securities. I mean, and who really hates the public. This is a guy that in the city council cut the number of school safety agents we have. Now, we had seizure of close to 7,000 weapons in New York City schools last year. What's wrong with him?
Yeah,
but it's that idea that somehow we don't have to protect people. We have to protect an idea. Hank, that's what the DSA stands for.
Hank, we're going to take a break, gentlemen. All right,
we got to come back to that.
You know what I like about Hank? You know, sometimes he'll say to you, "What do you really think?" Nobody ever asks Hank, "What do you really think?" Because he tells you exactly what he really thinks. All right, stay tuned. We're going to come back with more of Hank SHeinkopf, WABC, the Rev and the Rabbi.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
Honey Bunches of Oats es la forma perfecta de empezar el día con tu familia. Con hojuelas crujientes y miel de verdad que a los niños les encanta. Además, deliciosos trozos de granola, nueces y fruta que todos van a disfrutar. Honey Bunches of Oats es para todos. Toca el banner para saber más.
BTW, FYI. Visit Nexplanon.com/RN to learn about Nexplanon. It's an adjustable implant, 68 milligrams radiopaque. Or ask your HCP IRL. Okay, TTYL.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
The Rev and The Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joe Spatasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
We are talking with the well-known, well-respected Hank SHeinkopf, political analyst, strategist, communications, genius, and a rabbi as well. Hank, I was walking down the street the other day, and a woman stopped me from the former Soviet Union, and she said to me, nothing to do with Israel, she said, listen, I'm a proud Jew, but we got to vote against Mamdani for another reason. I come from a country that was destroyed because of socialism. We can't allow socialism to be pervasive anywhere in this country. So, Hank, what do we do? People say it's too late, nothing can be done, or is it something that should be done?
Oh, wait. Before you do that, explain it. Because socialism, especially this generation, they see it only as an economic system, but it's more than that. All right? It's a theory that has not been proven. Hank, please speak to that.
Well, it is not. It's not a proven theory. I understand the desire to do good, and part of what's motivating this kind of, interesting set of dynamics these young people have put together is that they have to do good, and Israel is bad, for example. Therefore, they have to attack Israel. Good means providing some kind of good, societal good, but they're not really paying attention. If they were paying attention, and if, by the way, if the adults running the country are paying attention, they would understand that this tax system is faulty, that it needs reform, not what was just done, but that it ensures that we'll have more chaos and more people screaming about socialism because we're not allowing people into the middle class in the ways we used to. With the death of labor unions, we'll make it even more tough for people to get in the middle class because a fair system has a redistribution of wealth through a tax system that makes it easier for people to live with services that matter and that are sufficiently comprehensive. What socialism does is it takes that to the extreme. It says everybody is equal except for the people running the place. And we will give everybody their equal portion. And these kids are saying they want to run the place, but they're not going to give everybody at the bottom what they deserve because that's not how they function.
So what's the strategy to counter this kind of mentality and what's happening now in this election period?
I think we've lost a generation because I think, Charlie Rangel, may he rest in peace, said that drafting people wouldn't be a bad idea to get them into public service. I think we ought to have mandatory public service. I mean, my brothers and I was a policeman, which is fairly well known. My brother George is a police officer who's also served in the United States Army. My brother Elliot served in the Israeli Army and was a paratrooper and was in wartime. The reality is, if you don't serve, you don't have an investment. If you don't want to serve in the Army, fine. Vista. Some kind of service that requires a commitment. So we have a generation that has benefited from those boys, the 9,000 of them that gave their lives and are lying in a place called right off Omaha Beach. We're benefiting from them, and this generation that has done nothing even close and been challenged in no way, but is demonized, has found demons to attack so they can protect their own lifestyle and their own thinking. It's pretty tragic.
Wow. So, Hank, I talked to you earlier about unions. And it seems unions have taken on a different kind of reputation than they had years ago. Just saw the endorsement, as you did, of the UFT, of Mamdani. Talk about the unions today as opposed to the unions of yesterday.
Well, I've worked for unions in my career. I mean, the first client I had when I went into business the first retainer client was Barry Feinstein, who was then the president of Local 237 Teamsters, with which I've been associated for most of the last, unfortunately for me, 40 years. I wish it was less, but then I was out for 13 years during changes in leadership. But the labor movement brought people into the middle class, created the 5-day work week, gave us the weekends, gave us really a pension system that functioned, and forced employers to do what was right. What's happened is we have less people who are in collective bargaining situations. And we also have, I have to say on behalf of the UFT and the other unions that bargain collectively with the city of New York, that they look and they view and they say, well, wait a second, it's a pragmatic decision. Democrats tend to win New York City elections. Therefore, Mamdani will tend to win. We have to face him at the table, bargaining table, and negotiations will start next year, 2026 for 2027 contracts. We better get on board now. So I understand what they're doing. But the hatred that expressed by the National Education Association is removal of ADL, which I'm not a big fan of, by the way, as an education tool. It's pretty significant because it tells you, because I cited Israel as the reason, it tells you where the country's going, that we are going to demonize people or particular entities because we can, because we don't look into ourselves. And we don't look into ourselves because religion is in trouble in this country. Yes, evangelicals are doing fine, but 70% intermarriage rate for Jews, and people calling themselves rabbis talking about siding with people who want to kill Jews, because when you say globalizing the intifada, you're not talking about buying Jews lunch. You're talking about blowing up buses, killing Jews, which is what happened during the intifada. This is not a joke. So allowing support for that kind of thinking is ultimately dangerous and will result, frankly, in the destruction of those who permit it. And that's why the unions are going to have some problems internally.
Rabbi, I think we have a little bit of time left yet that we can talk about the Johnson Amendment.
We do. We have about 5 minutes left.
I'm curious to hear what Hank has to say.
By the way, Hank, before we get to that, can I ask you this? As one Jew to another, looking at the trajectory, people are asking, is there a future for me as a Jew in New York City?
Jewish New York, which gave the world the most extraordinary things, is over. We've already seen an out movement. We used to be 2 million here. We're under 1 million now. It is a time of change. There will be, whether Mamdani wins or loses, it doesn't matter. The city's going to change. Why? Because you got within shot. And that's the difference. And people will look and they'll say, wait a second, black middle-class people are leaving. If you're a police officer, for example, which is the entry point for many African Americans into the middle class, and 20 years coming, your wife is a police officer, your husband is a police officer, you pick up your pensions, you have health care paid for until you're 65 when Medicare kicks in. You sell your house that you bought in Ardsley Park for $100,000, for $700,000 or $600,000. You take the cash, you take your pensions, and say, what am I doing here? Because they're afraid of what New York City could become and they don't want to live it anymore. Our time is over here. I mean, the era of Bill Paley, David Sarnoff, people who started television, people who took Marconi's great gift of radio and took the risk of starting networks, who took the risk of starting, in many ways, were pioneers of the recording industry. The things that made New York, right, are gone. It's over. Our time has passed.
Wow.
That sounds like a death sentence, Rabbi. I'm hoping that maybe there's still hope here for New York City.
Well, New York City's going to go through a fiscal problem, no matter who the mayor is, because you can't have the exodus of people and have the tax base remain intact. Our needs are extraordinary, but I said it in the Wall Street Journal interview last week. It's very simple. I believe still that New York is the great hope for this country. As a New York nationalist, we had free education, with which I benefited, and thousands of people benefited, and turned this country into the most extraordinary place. As New York goes, so goes the nation. And if New York fails as an idea, where opportunity exists, where people can find each other, even if they don't disagree, even if they don't agree on anything.
We got 2 minutes left. 2 minutes left.
All
right, Rev.
And that's why so many people are watching New York City politics. If Mamdani wins, it's sending a message to the entire nation. You're right. It's not confined to New York City.
I worry about this country, which I love, because it gave people like me. I mean, it was a kid out of South Bronx, and I was dropped. 16, I had no place to live. 15, no place to live, no money in my pocket, no home on my head. It allowed me to become me. What's the future going to look like with a generation that doesn't understand what it means for me to become me, or you to become you, or someone else to have that opportunity, because they're self-engaged. They're not really thinking about how you feed people in soup kitchens, how you ensure that churches function, how you ensure that nonprofit institutions can provide services. They're thinking about themselves, and that's why Mamdani is dangerous.
Yeah, we've come to the end of the program. Rev, I listened to Hank, and now I know I have to move in with you. What's the sense? I'm moving into your house.
There's got to be hope, Hank.
All right.
I'm going to pray, and I'm going to pray for hope, and I hope everybody else does.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Thank you so much. Hank SHeinkopf, always, you're a very interesting person with a lot of insights and a lot of intelligence, and we are just very fortunate to know you. Thank you.
Thank you for being on the program. And thank you, our listeners, for joining in to this episode of The Rev and The Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Network. Till next time, stay well, stay safe. God bless.
Thanks for listening to The Rev and The Rabbi. You can hear The Rev and The Rabbi Sunday mornings at 7. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.